Well, good morning, church. Thank you for joining us for our daily Devo. Today, we're in Acts chapter 11. Such a pivotal chapter. A matter of fact, Acts 10 and 11 are probably the most pivotal chapters, not just in Acts, but in the history of the church. See, before Acts 10, every believer was a Jew. It's only when Peter, directed by a vision, goes and shares Christ and Gentiles receive Christ that we see Christianity spreading beyond the circle of Jews. And so what happens in chapter 11 when Peter comes back? He's criticized for eating with non-believers because as Jews, they weren't supposed to eat in what would be considered an unclean home, someone who wasn't a Jew. And Peter shares how not only did God direct him, but God used this and now they were believers. And then right in that chapter, we hear about the outbreak of the church in Antioch. Remember, there were Jews who came from all around the world for Passover and for Pentecost. And then they stayed in Jerusalem longer after these Jews become Christians, but we know there's persecution. So they head out, and when they do, a group of them make it to Antioch. And at first they start sharing Christ with other Jews, which is what you would expect. But then they start sharing Christ with Gentiles, and the Gentiles start to receive Christ, so much so that it becomes known back to Jerusalem, there is a huge group of Gentile believers. They don't know what to do with it. So they send Barnabas, what a great guy to send, again, son of encouragement, to go and check it out. And when he goes and he talks, he sees that the faith of these Gentiles are sincere. So he starts to teach him. But I love this. Barnabas could have just stayed there and discipled and taught these believers, but instead he goes and gets Paul. Remember Paul, who had come to know Christ, who was persecuting the church, and then Barnabas, remember, stands up for him with the apostles to say that, hey, God is with this man. I love it that he gets Paul. Maybe he got Paul because Paul grew up in a Gentile city, because Paul understood Gentiles more because of that, and he thought they would connect. Maybe he just saw the opportunity to pour into the life of Paul. But I see this. He does one important thing, and I think wherever you see the gospel and the church expand, you see this. People don't do ministry alone. See, Barnabas knew he could have stayed and taught, but he needed to multiply. So he goes and he gets Paul and he brings them back. And then for the next year, they teach the Gentile Christians. The church grows. As a matter of fact, we're told the first time they're called Christians are at Antioch. And I think this is such a great principle because it's not enough just to see someone come to know Christ. They need to grow in their faith. And those of us who are mature in our faith need to always think, who is that person we're pouring into? And really, Barnabas was pouring into Paul. And then guess what? Later on, what does Paul do? Paul has people he pours into Titus and Timothy. A matter of fact, I love what he says to Timothy. He tells him this: the things which you've heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, these entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. See, that's what Barnabas did. He took and he entrusted this to Paul, who Paul entrusted it to Timothy, and Timothy entrusted into others who could teach others. And it's what we're called to do. Life on life, person on person, seeing God help us, not just to see someone come to know Christ, but see their life transformed as we share what God has done in our life in a way in which they can share it with others. Guys, this is where the gospel expanded. This is why we're here today. And if you look at the rest of the book of Acts, it's no longer centered in Jerusalem. It's no longer Jewish centric, but we're going to follow Paul and Barnabas, and then Paul again when he goes on a missionary journey. And we're going to see the gospel expanding to the outermost parts of the known world. And it's what God wants to do. He wants to use us to reach others. And one of the simple ways, guys, I can say, never do ministry alone. Who can you bring into your life? Who can you encourage them in their walk so they can encourage others in the way in which you've encouraged them? Guys, thank you for joining us for our daily Devo. I hope you continue, and I hope you have a blessed day.